Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. We have previously looked at some really badly run Formula 1 teams, from the pretty disastrous Onyx to the utterly chaotic Colony and Eurobrun, and the oh my god, what are you mud thumpers doing? This is not how you run a racing team levels of madness that were Andrea Moda. In this video, we will be looking at another team that were almost constantly flirting with controversy, but did have some success in their brief time as a team, and their eventual downfall brought about the end of one of motorsport's most historic names. This is the story of Leyton House Racing and their brief 2-year stint as a team in Formula 1, as well as how they came about and what led to their demise. So make sure you subscribe and let's jump into the video. The story of Leyton House starts with the little team that could. The March Engineering Team, which was founded by eventual FIA President Max Mosley, eventual Arrows co-founder Alan Rees, mechanic Graham Coker, and the person at the helm for the majority of March's life, Robin Herd. Founded in 1969, they were finishing third in the Constructors in the Formula 1 Championship a year later. Chris Amon and Joe Siffert were the first March Works drivers. Amon scored all the points and got 3 podiums in their first year. March never did better than this in the Constructors. Their peak was in the 70s, launching the careers of Niki Lauda and Ronnie Peterson. It was Jackie Stewart in a Tyrrell March that took the first win in 1970 at the Spanish Grand Prix, but March themselves only ever won a couple of races. Vittorio Brambilla won his only Grand Prix at Austria in 1975, and Ronnie Peterson at the 1976 Italian Grand Prix. By the 80s, results dropped off, and March dropped out altogether for a few years, returning for a couple of years supporting the Ram racing efforts to very little success, and rarely actually qualifying for races. Meanwhile, March were a successful customer Formula 2 manufacturer, and over in America, March chassis took 5 Indy 500 wins in a row between 1983 and 1987. But things were not going well, and when the team started to trade stocks publicly and the dollar subsequently crashed, and with customers for their chassis and other formula drying up, March were in trouble. The team were brought out by a Japanese real estate magnate who rebranded the team and kept it on the grid for a few more years. Akira Akagi had been involved with the team since they returned to Formula 1 in 1987. He was in the real estate business from a young age, working for his father's company Kenzai in the mid-60s and transforming it into a mega real estate group of companies called the Leyton House Group by the mid-80s. Involved in everything from real estate to restaurants and sporting apparel, Akagi decided to start sponsoring, especially in motorsport. At this point, I'd like to make it clear that if this was the plot of an anime, Akira Akagi would be a villain. Not like a demon conquering the world type of villain, more a sleazy business guy taking over the world with business. He was Korean, but did nothing to dispel the Japanese label often given to him. He wanted the Leyton House name to be seen in motor racing, as Japan had a large Formula 1 fanbase to exploit. He started straight away with sponsorship of the Japanese efforts in the World Sports Car Championship. The Toms Toyota of Satoru Nakajima, Masanori Sekiya and Kaoru Hoshino finished 12th at the 1985 24 Hours of Le Mans and grabbed a podium at Fuji. But the real project was Akira Hagiwara, a bang-average runner in Japanese Formula 2. He may be the first driver to race in the famous Leyton House colours. He was killed in a testing crash at Sugo driving a Mercedes touring car. If that had not happened, he may have been in Formula 1 in 1987. That seems to have been the game plan. Soon after, he made contact with Cesare Garibaldi, the agent of International F3000 driver Yvonne Capelli. Yvonne Capelli won the International F3000 Championship later in the year, sporting the Leyton House colours, and also raced a few times in Japan. Akagi wanted him to continue in Japan, but Capelli wanted Formula 1, and Garibaldi convinced Akagi to put up $4 million to get Capelli in at the March team. Meanwhile, March themselves had spent a few years away to concentrate on their customer car business in the junior categories and America, on which they relied for cash to keep the lights on. By the mid-80s, March were no longer a sought-after chassis, and so with Akira Akagi and Cesare Garibaldi throwing the money at Robin Herd for a Formula 1 car for Capelli, they returned to Formula 1, but they needed a revolutionary chassis. They didn't have the budget of the big boys, and they only had V8 Judd engines. so the chassis would have to be spectacular. The 1987 chassis was essentially a block of Swiss cheese. They didn't have time to finish the chassis they were working on, so for the first race, Capelli used a modified International F3000 chassis with a sports car engine that was way slower than anyone else in the field. Yvon Capelli didn't even make the start of the Brazilian Grand Prix. The real car turned up for round 2 at Imola and was instantly an improvement. It wasn't hard to improve over nothing, I guess. There were competent performances that year, but Capelli only scored 1 point at Monaco, and there was a lot more hope for 1988. In steps a young engineer and designer named Adrian Newey, and he came with a revolutionary design for 1988. Capelli was joined by Mauricio Gugelmin, and the pair scored regular points, with Yvon Capelli even leading a race at one point, and taking a couple of podiums. March was 6th overall. That was the peak of the Leyton House March project, and things started to go downhill really quickly. Akagi purchased the rest of March and the International F3000 team and was now in full control. Cesare Garibaldi, who had been a big part of the team, was killed in a car crash in January. All subsequent March cars would start with CG as their name. Yvon Capelli would score no points in 1989, and in fact only finished 2 races, whilst Gugelmin finished on the podium in the 1988 car, and then scored no points at the subsequent 15 rounds. Reliability was the main issue. The gearbox had a tendency to chew itself to pieces, and if it didn't, then the electrics would fail in the Judd engine. The 1990 Newey designed car was even more revolutionary, to the point every team copied it in 1991. The now renamed Leyton House Racing team were less impressed. Problems at the wind tunnel meant issues with the aerodynamics at the first few races, and Adrian Newey, arguably the best car designer in the history of Formula 1, was fired by Leyton House. Newey landed a job at Williams, so he probably wasn't sad to leave. But it left Leyton House with a very track-specific car. On smooth tracks, it was brilliant. On bumpy tracks, it was uncontrollable. The team even led the French Grand Prix at Paul Ricard 1-2, until Gugelmin came down with a case of the gremlins and Capelli was overtaken by Alain Prost. The second place at the smooth French track being Capelli's only finish of the year after not qualifying at the very bumpy Mexican Grand Prix 1 round earlier. 1991 was the second and final year of the Leyton House Racing team. They moved from Judd engines to brand new Ilmor engines developed by Mercedes. Yvon Capelli often ran in the top 6, but generally broke down before race end, and ended his time with March/Leyton House with just 1 more point, the team's only one of 1991. Capelli left before the final 2 rounds, replaced by Austrian Karl Wendlinger, who was making his debut. He had links with the Sauber sports car team that used Ilmor engines, and would be part of Sauber Ilmor when they joined Formula 1 a couple of years later. Akira Akagi was not around to see this. He was arrested for financial fuckity-doos, something to do with illegal loans with his company and a large Japanese bank called Fuji Bank. There was also accusations of money laundering and fraud. Akagi was sent to prison for 10 years. I don't know if he served a full term, but he did indeed go to prison. One of his associates took over the team, which may have been funded with money Akagi acquired illegally, but the team was not long for this world. They reverted to the March name for 1992 with Karl Wendlinger and Paul Belmondo starting the year, but in a desperate bid to survive, they were replaced later on with Emanuele Naspetti and Jan Lammers, who last drove in Formula 1 10 years previously, still the longest gap between Formula 1 drives. Wendlinger scored their only points, the final points for March in Formula 1. After a series of very complicated buyouts and selling off different parts of the business to various people, March were done. Leyton House Racing were not the worst team in Formula 1 ever. Maybe a bit ambitious, but it could have worked. It needed more money behind it and maybe a different choice of engine and more reliability, but the bones of something were there. They should have held on to Adrian Newey for whatever it cost, but we can only really say that with hindsight. He wasn't the racing juggernaut he is today. Whilst Akira Akagi's arrest was ultimately the death blow, Leyton House Racing and March were more the victims of changing times. March had always supported their Formula 1 efforts by selling customer cars, and that market shrank severely in the late 80s and early 90s. Being unable to replace that revenue stream was always going to be a massive handicap. For Akagi's part, this wasn't just a vanity project, he was very enthusiastic about motorsport and wanted to be a part of it. And he did do that. Leyton House would occasionally put in good performances, and the colours are famous amongst racing fans even to this day. What happened to everyone in the aftermath? Well, obviously, Akagi was in prison for some time. He eventually was released and went back to doing what he did best: business. He passed away in 2018. The Leyton House brand was purchased by the Sansei Shoji company and has been reborn in recent years in sportswear. The rights to March have been passed around a few times. A group under the March name put in an entry to Formula 1 in 2010, but they didn't even have a factory, cars, drivers or staff. They didn't have anything. The FIA decided against letting them have a place on the grid. As for the drivers, Yvon Capelli moved to Ferrari for 1992 and had a really bad time. He was gone from Formula 1 within a few years, having never hit the heights he should have. Mauricio Gugelmin spent 1992 with Jordan before heading to America and racing in the kart series, taking a win in 1997. Carl Wendlinger would return to Formula 1 with Sauber in 1993, but only scored the odds points finish before going back to sports cars. Paul Belmondo returned in 1994 with Pacific and qualified for 2 races out of 16. Emanuelina Naspetti would get one more race with Jordan before becoming a very successful touring car driver, and Jan Lammers would continue in sports car racing and touring cars, even recently. Adrian Newey is now a Formula 1 god at Red Bull and even designing road cars, one of the most sought after names in motorsport. So that is the story of Leyton House Racing. Not the worst mess in Formula 1 history, but let's be honest, if your owner gets arrested, something wasn't right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was this a badly run team, or could this have worked? Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.